The chains snap shut. A god screams. And for the first time in the history of the world, nothing dies. Not a single soul crosses over. Not the old, not the sick, not the wounded left bleeding on the field. Death itself stands bound in a cellar, wrists locked in bronze, while a mortal king watches from the shadows with a grin on his face. But to grasp how one man broke the oldest law in the cosmos, you need to stand where he stood, in Corinth, in the forge, where the trap was built. Corinth sat at a crossroads, two seas on either side, trade routes pouring through like blood through a heart. The king of this city was not a warrior. He was something far more dangerous. He was clever. His name was Sisyphus, and he did not fear the gods. He studied them. Every Greek child grew up knowing a simple truth. Death comes. It wears a face. They called that face Thanatos. Not a monster, not a demon, a god. Quiet, patient. His shadow fell on every doorstep sooner or later, and no mortal had ever pushed that shadow back. Sisyphus watched the way other men dealt with death. They wept. They prayed. They built tombs and burned offerings. He saw all of this and asked a different question. Not how do I honor death? How do I stop it? Picture the workshop. Low ceiling. Smoke curling from the forge. Bronze glowing in the coals. Sisyphus holds a pair of shackles up to the firelight and tests the hinge. The jaws open wide, then snap shut with a click. One way only. The teeth on the ratchet lock down like the bite of a dog that will not let go. He dips the metal back into the coals, makes it harder, stronger, hard enough, he hopes, to hold a god. The trap itself was simple. Brilliant things often are. Sisyphus sent word to the heavens that he wished to make an offering, a grand one. He asked Thanatos to come collect a soul in person. Not just any soul, his own. It was an act of false surrender, a piece of theater so bold it bordered on madness. And Thanatos came. The god of death walked into the cellar beneath the palace. He moved the way smoke moves. Silent, certain, Sisyphus stood there, arms open, as if ready to go. Then he held up the shackles. He told Thanatos they were a gift, a display piece, fit for a god. He asked him to try them on, just once, just to see how they looked on divine wrists. And Thanatos, who had never once been refused or tricked, who had walked through every defense mortals ever built, slid his hands into the bronze jaws. The ratchet clicked. The lock bit down, and the god of death could not move. Now here is where the story stops being a myth and starts being a warning. Because what happens next is not a victory. It is a disaster. The moment Thanatos was bound, the world changed. But not the way you might dream. The change was slow at first. An old woman in a village near Thebes did not die when she should have. A soldier took a spear through the chest and kept breathing. A child born too weak to survive its first night was still crying at dawn. Within weeks, the gates of the underworld stood empty. No new souls arrived. Hades, Lord of the Dead, sat on his throne in silence. His kingdom was built for a river of souls. Now the river had run dry, but the real horror played out above ground. Think about what a city looks like when no one can die. The sick do not recover. They just keep suffering. The old do not pass. They linger in pain that has no end. Battles become nightmares. Two armies clash and nobody falls. They hack at each other until they drop, then rise and do it again. War loses all meaning when it cannot produce a single grave. Ares, the god of war, felt this first. His entire purpose rested on the stakes of combat. The risk of death gave every sword swing weight, every charge meaning, every shield wall a cost. Strip that away, and war becomes a pointless, brutal game with no score and no finish. Hades felt something different. The underworld was a system. Souls arrived, were judged, and moved to their place. That flow was the engine of his realm. Without it, the judges sat idle. The fields of the dead grew quiet. The The whole structure of the afterlife began to buckle under its own stillness. But the most urgent alarm rang on Olympus. Zeus, the one who kept the cosmic balance, looked down and saw a world coming apart. Funerals stopped. Rituals broke down. The cycle that connected mortals to gods, through grief, through honor, through the promise of what comes after, that cycle was broken, and a mortal had broken it. Here is what most people miss about this story. They think Zeus punished Sisyphus out of anger, out of wounded pride. The truth is colder than that. Zeus acted out of need. The system could not hold. Life without death is not a paradise. It is a machine with no exhaust valve. Pressure builds, and something has to give. So Zeus called a council, not a dramatic showdown, a meeting. Hades arrived with his complaint. Ares arrived with his, and Zeus laid out the ruling. Thanatos must be freed. The chains must be broken, and Sisyphus must pay. Ares was the one who went down to the cellar, not out of kindness, out of fury. He tore the shackles from the god of death with bare hands, and the moment those bronze jaws opened, the backlog released. Souls flooded through the gates. The old woman in Thebes finally closed her eyes. The soldier on the field stopped breathing, and death resumed its work. But Sisyphus was not done. Even after Thanatos was freed, the king of Corinth had one more trick. Before his own death, he whispered orders to his wife. He told her not to bury him, not to place the coin on his tongue, not to perform a single rite. When he arrived in the underworld, he stood before the judges and argued that his burial was improper, that he had been wronged by the living, that he deserved to go back and set things right. And they let him go. Persephone herself granted him leave to return to the surface. He walked back into the sunlight, and he refused to come back. This is the part that sealed his fate. Not the chains, not the trick on Thanatos, the second escape, because it proved that Sisyphus was not acting on impulse. He was running a strategy, every move planned, every loophole found and used. His mind was his weapon, and he aimed it at the foundations of everything. The obvious reading of his punishment is simple. He rolled a boulder up a mountain. It rolled back down. He pushed it up again. Forever, a brute task for a clever man. But that reading misses the point. The punishment was designed, tailored, the way a key is cut to fit one lock. Sisyphus used his mind to outsmart death. So the gods gave him a task where his mind was useless. No strategy helps you push a rock. No trick makes it lighter. No scheme keeps it at the top. He could see, with perfect clarity, that the task was pointless, and he could do nothing about it. But here is where the story turns one more time. Because a French thinker named Camus looked at this punishment and saw something the gods did not intend. He saw a hero, not a hero of strength, not a hero of escape, a hero of awareness. Camus argued that the most human moment in the myth is the walk back down the mountain, after the boulder rolls away, before Sisyphus starts pushing again. In that pause, he knows exactly what awaits him. He sees the slope. He sees the weight. He knows the outcome, and he walks down anyway. That choice, Camus said, is where meaning lives, not in the result, not in the victory. In the act of going on, when you know there is no victory. The gods wanted to crush him with pointless labor. Instead, he owned it. But this reading has limits. It works only when the person pushing the rock is awake, aware, choosing. Most people who grind through pointless tasks do not feel like heroes. They feel trapped. You must be aware of the absurdity and still push. Remove that awareness, and all that remains is suffering. So here is the question that still echoes, the same one that haunts every lab working on life extension, every startup chasing the cure for aging, every dreamer who pictures a world without death. Sisyphus proved it could be done. He stopped the clock, and the world fell apart. If this story gripped you, there is another myth waiting, one about a man who stole fire from the gods and paid an even stranger price. Subscribe so you do not miss it. The boulder sits at the bottom of the slope. Sisyphus cracks his knuckles, and he smiles, because the mountain is his now.